From New York, it's the Harvey Hour. My name's Stephen Harvey. Good to have you in on a Friday. Today is Friday. My name's Stephen Harvey. Like I said, as always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. How are you doing today on this Friday? Not Tuesday like before. On Friday. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. I always like Fridays.
Yeah.
I got the weekend to look forward to, and great football this weekend, man.
Yeah.
Right? We got the
Texans, Ravens is going to be a great game.
8, the best 8 teams playing.
Yeah.
Right? This is coming down to the wire now. It's going to be great.
Absolutely. Before we get into the games, I do want to talk about some news that broke over earlier this week, and that's that we both speculated that a head coach could be fired, and it turns out that's not the case. Jerry Jones is bringing back Mike McCarthy for another season, the 2024 season. He posted in his statement, quote, "I believe this team is very close and capable of achieving our ultimate goals, and the best step forward for us will be with Mike McCarthy as our head coach. There is great benefit to continuing the team's progress under Mike's leadership as our head coach. Specifically, there are many layers of success that have occurred this season as a result of Mike's approach to leading the team both with individual players and with our team collectively." He continues, "Our loss Sunday is shared by everyone here, not just Coach McCarthy. Our players, our coaches, our front office, myself. There's accountability for our results. I am accountable for our results. The lens we use to view and evaluate Coach Mike McCarthy is holistic. While we're all disappointed with the result on Sunday and with our playoff record, I am 100% supportive of him as our head coach and ability to reach our goals." Jerry Jones does a lot of talking, and the fact that he even needs to say this means that he definitely thought about getting rid of Coach Mike McCarthy. I want to know, are you surprised that Mike McCarthy is the head coach, and is Jerry Jones making a mistake in retaining him?
Well, I'm quite surprised that Jerry Jones didn't fire him. After all he said after the playoff game, I'm floored. I never expected this to happen. We had the expectations of going deep into the playoffs. He was very, very upset. Mike McCarthy walked off the field looking like a man who knew he'd lost his job. Lo and behold, Jerry Jones is going to hang on to him. So he has 1 year left on his contract. So, I'd say it's all or nothing for Mike McCarthy for 2024. He's got to come through. And, Dak Prescott, likewise, he's in his last year of his contract. He counts $59 million against the cap, unless he gets an extension or avoidable years. And he's probably going to need something like a $50 million a year contract, right, to hang on to him. And they can't franchise tag him in 2025 because he's a free agent. So they're in a little bit of a pickle here. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do, but my guess is if McCarthy bombs out in the playoffs next year and Dak Prescott plays terrible, probably both of them will be gone.
That's probably true. I would say that when it comes to both of the quarterback and the head coach, they're both maybe gone if they fail next year. But when it comes to Mike McCarthy, and I agree with Jerry Jones saying that the loss Sunday was shared by everyone, not just head coach Mike McCarthy. And I think we need to take a serious look at Dak Prescott because we've seen him. He's great, phenomenal regular season quarterback.
This year
and prior seasons before, he's had good regular seasons. This is his best year by I would agree with you. This is arguably his best year besides his rookie year. And even in 2019, he threw for 4,900 yards. But in the playoffs, it's a completely different quarterback. Completely different. He's 2-5, which I believe is the lowest winning percentage, minimum 5 playoff games played. 14 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 2-1. Not great, but not horrible. It's really not that good. But we've seen him in the past couple of years. The coaching mistakes when it comes to Mike McCarthy, that QB draw play that they decided to call against Jimmy G and the 49ers, you failed on that one. Then this year you go up against the youngest team in the NFL and you absolutely get smoked by them. You've had several opportunities, and in the 49er game last year, when your defense which is different in this game, but last year, your defense stepped up against Purdy and the 49ers, held them to 19 points, and you only scored 12. Because you threw 2 interceptions, I think in the second quarter, that killed your team. You threw your game away. And in this game, I don't care about that. I don't care about the touchdowns. What were you in that first half? 27-0. And how did it get to 27-0? Oh, you threw a pick six. Right after the previous drive, you threw, it was punt, pick six. Dak Prescott in the playoffs is a completely different quarterback. He's not a good quarterback.
He looked
in the
very
playoffs.
nervous.
And which is surprising because he's in year, what, 8?
That's where the coaching could help him, I think. And McCarthy has not figured that out. If it had been somebody like Belichick, I think Dak Prescott had a chance to play much better because the preparation would have been different. The defense would have been much better. The defense was terrible in this game, right?
I'd say your quarterback kills you doing that, throwing interceptions.
Dan Quinn thinking about his head coaching job coming up instead of thinking about the game plan for against the Packers on this game. So I think there's a lot. I agree. There's a lot of blame to go around. It wasn't all McCarthy, but he's the head coach. He's the guy that accepts the responsibility, and his players let him down. They didn't play well. Micah Parsons played terrible. That's true. Dak Prescott didn't play well. The running game is kind of non-existent. They need a running game. That's something they got to work on. So they've got some things they got to fix, and I don't know. If I were a Cowboys fan, I guess I'd be a little upset by this.
And that's where I think Jerry Jones deserves some of the blame, because I understand Zeke at the time that they got off him, which was this year. He was not, his first 3 years where he was rushing for 95 yards a game and putting up great numbers. He's a complimentary back. And Tony Pollard looked like the better back. He had one game this year of 100 or more rushing yards. One singular game. And what that tells me is he can't be your primary running back. If you cannot consistently, or at least half the season, get 100 yards rushing, your offensive line sucks. Or you shouldn't be your feature back. In an offense where Dak, if he throws 34 passes or fewer, the numbers that he puts up compared to 35 or more pass attempts, they're drastically different. Dak Prescott is a significantly better quarterback when he throws 34 or less passes. And in this game, he just couldn't because the offense, you were down 27-0 before the second half started. Yeah. So I would say in that regard, you had Dalvin Cook. You had the potential to get Dalvin Cook. You had the potential to maybe re-sign Zeke. You had some options out there. You have next year, you have an option to sign Derrick Henry. Will you go out and get him? I think you should. I think you should if you want a serious shot. Your offensive line is pretty good. It's been good over the years. So I think you need to reinforce the running game. Your offensive line is set. Your defensive line is great.
Wide receivers are good.
Wide receivers, you have CeeDee Lamb. You have Brandon Cooks. You have some pieces.
Michael Gallup
as well. You have Jake Ferguson, your tight end. You have a lot of pieces in the playoffs.
They have
your quarterback falls apart.
They have the talent. They just don't. The mental mistakes are the reasons they haven't advanced further and gotten to at least the NFC championship game. They've been in the playoffs 3 of the last 4 years, and they just haven't been able to do it. 2 out of 3. I have a question for you.
I put that mostly on the quarterback, truthfully, because we've seen Dak completely crumble.
Well, in this game, I'd put it on the defense, too. They did give up 45 points.
Yeah, but your offense basically put up 0. Your offense basically put up 0. Yeah. I'm throwing the touchdowns and the 403 yards away because at that point you're down 27-0.
I know.
You're not even entering the second half, and it's already garbage time at that point.
Pretty much.
Because everyone just looks so defeated. What was the question you were going to ask me?
Why do you think Jerry Jones didn't go for Bill Belichick?
I understand Bill Parcells, Parcells and that kind of culture. Belichick sort of from the same personality with the power and the structure. I don't think it would have worked. I think first of all, I think Jerry Jones is a little bit blindsided. He likes, homegrown talent. And I think Mike McCarthy is a guy who's built up something. I think Belichick he would have brought over I think it's the same reason why the Chargers were afraid to talk to him, and that's rumored wariness about bringing Belichick in is because he would replace everybody on that staff. I think Kellen Moore is a pretty good OC. I think Dan Quinn has been a very good defensive coordinator for the Cowboys.
He's gone though. He's going to go be a head coach.
Maybe we'll have to wait and see, but I think it's because I think Belichick would want too much control, and Jerry Jones is a meddling owner. And I think Belichick, honestly, I don't think the job would basically be good for Belichick because he would need to answer not only for his team's performance, but also Jerry Jones's press conference after every game. Or if he goes on a radio station the next morning, he would have to answer not only to the performance of his players, but the comments from his own from leadership, from the owner. So I don't think Belichick would have even been interested. But when it comes to Jerry Jones' point of view, I would say it would have been too much. I think the power Belichick would have had, he would be asking for too much. And Jerry Jones, he doesn't want to give up that tremendous power, especially at this point.
Mm-hmm. Jerry Jones is very public.
Yeah.
And Belichick doesn't like that. The Patriots should never hear much about them during the week or during the season, for that matter, unless they're playing the games. The players don't talk to the press much. They can't talk about injuries or anything, how they feel about the other team. That's frowned upon. You get in trouble for doing that. The owner says very little, and Belichick says very little. So having Jerry Jones out there talking about everything, I think, would rub Belichick the wrong way. I think Belichick and Jones know each other very well, and that's probably why they aren't going to be teaming up.
You think they know each other too well?
They know each other too well. I think they have a very good understanding of what each would be getting into. And while Belichick, I think, would have liked to come to the Cowboys, I think that there could have been an arrangement made there for him to go to the Cowboys. Jerry Jones is the one that probably didn't want this deal to happen because he would have to cede some of his power, and that's not what he wants to do.
And at this stage of the game, we don't know how long Jerry Jones is going to be around here, but this is a win-now team, and to try to maybe change your culture to the Patriot way, if you will, at this point, it would be essential. I'm not saying a complete reset, but I think the mentality would shift, and at this point, with this team and how Mike McCarthy built up this team and how he's coached this team, I don't think it would have been as successful as people are thinking. Now, reportedly, Belichick wants that sort of a talented team, but underachieving. And you could say that's the Falcons. You could definitely say that's the Chargers. I don't think the Cowboys... I really just think it's Dak Prescott. When your leader, your quarterback, is playing horribly, and add on top of that, you're playing the youngest team in the NFL and getting cooked by them, I would say that's just an entire recipe for disaster on all accounts. But just as a lot of the wins, the credit goes to the quarterback, I do think in this case, and if we're talking about in the playoffs, we look at Dak Prescott. Two picks, horrible play, low passing yards, opportunities to win, fall through. He just hasn't been good. So
you think it's all on Dak Prescott?
I'm not saying it's all on Dak Prescott, because it's especially in that 49er game wwhere they ran, I think it was, 2 years ago, where they set a quarterback draw with 19 or 17 seconds left in the game. I think that's a bad play.
Yeah.
Because I think, if you couldn't kick a field goal, you had to go for a touchdown.
The chances of winning that game were low anyway, right?
Because you couldn't kick a field goal, you had to go for a touchdown.
We'll only have maybe 2 plays left. And maybe. Pretty far out there to be able to score a touchdown. So there was a low probability of winning that game anyway.
I still think it's a bad call, though. You called
that.
No,
I think it was a bad call, too, but it wasn't really the call that I think lost the game, because the chances of scoring a touchdown from there were pretty low.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then we look at last year against the 49ers. Your defense did its job against one of the best offenses at the time. Brock Purdy was undefeated at that point, playing phenomenally with the plethora of talent from CMC, Trent Williams, your offensive lineman. You had Deebo Samuel, George. You had so many pieces, and that offense could only put up 19 points. You, on the other hand, could only put up 12. And had a number of opportunities to go down and score.
Yeah,
and you threw it to the other team.
Yeah.
And in this game, your defense couldn't stop nothing. Your offense legitimately couldn't do anything.
And the turnovers.
And you had 2 interceptions. You had 2 turnovers. One was a pick 6 and 4 total drives. The other 2 were punts. I just think when it comes to playoff time, and the writing was on the wall too. It's playoffs, Dak Prescott, Cowboys, they don't match. Oil and water, they don't mix. And I really think at this point, bringing back Mike McCarthy when there is a Ben Johnson out there, when there's a Jim Harbaugh out there, at this point, you have to question whether or not Jerry Jones is seriously thinking Super Bowl. Because we've seen this recipe.
I think he's thinking more about 12 wins a year.
He's had that for the past 3 seasons.
He's had that for the last 3 seasons. He doesn't want to give that up. He doesn't want to risk losing that. He knows he has a team that can win a lot of games in the regular season. He's willing to risk, getting kicked out of the playoffs relatively quickly against having a lot of wins and winning the division.
But I just wonder what was the comments before the playoff game when he was asked about, Mike McCarthy's job, and say, yeah, we'll see. Why even say that if you're just going to come out, a couple days after the loss and be like, oh, yeah, he's coming back? To me, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
I know. It's odd. I'm surprised, too.
But I think it's now time to jump into the beginning of these playoff games. So let's start with the first one Saturday. Let's jump right into it. So the Houston Texans are set to face off against the Baltimore Ravens, 4:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. The Ravens. It's been a while since Lamar Jackson played, about 3 weeks, I would say, while the Houston Texans coming off a very dominant victory against the number one defense, in the NFL, the Cleveland Browns, dropped a whole 45-piece on them with a number of pick sixes. Joe Flacco did not play very well, while C.J. Stroud put up a 98.4 quarterback rating, scale of 0 to 100, 274 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Houston Texans look very, very good. I want to know, I'm going to ask you this question because a lot of people are saying, oh, yeah, no, the Texans could maybe make this interesting. Oh, and some people are saying, oh, no, look at the Ravens. There's really no misses at this team. They're going to easily, absolutely dominate this super young team. How confident are you that the Ravens will actually completely take care of C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans and just overpower them and dominate them?
Mm-hmm. I'm not confident. I think that the Ravens will win, but I don't think they'll cover a 9.5-point spread. I think the Texans are capable of beating them, actually. I don't think it will happen, but I do think that if they play a game like they did against the Browns, then they'll be in the game for sure, and it will be very close. But I do think there's some weaknesses on the Texans that it will cost them the game. Not by many points, but I do think it will cost them the game. They play the cover 3 and the cover 4 like 53% of the time. And Lamar Jackson's quarterback rating is 74% against the cover 3 and 93% against the cover 4. So he plays well against that. The Texans' ground game is nowhere near what the Ravens is, right? And they have a below average passing defense. So I think those weaknesses didn't hurt them. In the game against the Browns, and the Browns played terrible. I think their defense didn't show up at all, which was very surprising. But against the Ravens, who have really an elite team, they could be the best team in the league. I think that those weaknesses will mean that they don't win, but I do think it's going to be close.
So what's the score?
I have the score, Ravens 35, Texans 31. It's going to be a high-scoring game.
So, I was tempted to pick the Houston Texans for mainly one reason. And when it comes on the amount of pressure that each team possesses in the playoffs, we knew the Cowboys entering the playoffs had a bunch of pressure because they're America's team. Dak Prescott having an MVP-type season. This defense was playing out of its mind. You could look at the numbers home away. They were at home, averaging about 37 points a game at home. The Packers had a lot of pressure, the Cowboys had a lot of pressure on them. I think the Ravens, when we talk about now in the divisional round, they probably have the most pressure, and especially Lamar Jackson. Because what we've seen from Lamar Jackson in his career in the playoffs, compared to what we've seen him in the regular season, and he's having MVP-type performances, is his unanimous MVP-type year. Remember that? It was his first legitimate playoff game. He completely crapped the bed. What about in his career in the playoffs? Well, they're ugly. 1-3 record, a 55.9% completion percentage, 225 passing yards a game, 3 touchdowns, 5 picks, 6.6 yards an attempt, a passer rating of 68.3. He is at least 20 passer rating points below any other playoff quarterback. The next lowest would be Jared Goff at about 85. So when we take a look at Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, it's really ugly. And so I think for Lamar Jackson to flip this narrative, he would not only need to win this game, he would need to make it to a Super Bowl and probably have to win the Super Bowl. Otherwise, I don't know if we could. It would be a similar thing to Dak Prescott. Now, I'm saying Lamar Jackson is light years above in talent ahead of Dak Prescott, but when it comes to the playoffs, when the lights are the brightest, we've already seen C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love. They put up phenomenal games in the playoffs. Lamar Jackson, I think in that unanimous MVP year, I think he was trying to do too much. He was trying to be the hero. In this series right now, we'll have to see obviously how the game turns out, but as the season has gone on, this team is much better than the 2019 Ravens, at least on offense, because it wasn't Mark Andrews or bust. Now you have Zay Flowers. Mark Andrews is not activated for this game. He was practicing. He was questionable, but they will not activate him. But Isaiah Likely's doing a fine job. We could see Dalvin Cook as a running back for the Ravens. I think this Ravens team is healthier and better than 2019. So I think this is a good setup for Lamar Jackson to perform okay. And I'm really wondering how Lamar Jackson individually is going to play. Is he going to play hero ball, or is he going to play to how he's been playing the rest of the year? Because in the playoffs during that 2019 season, look at the regular season Lamar, look at the playoff Lamar. Lamar was a little bit more complimentary, and in the playoffs, or in the regular season, and in the playoffs, he was trying to do everything, and he basically shot himself in the foot. So for me, I am picking the Ravens, but I agree with you. I do think it's going to be relatively close. I have the Ravens winning 30-24, a little bit beyond, a little bit of a bigger gap between my score and your score, but I do have the Ravens winning. But yeah. I'm going to say this right now. Same thing what I said with the Cowboys. I'm very scared that a very young team like the Texans, who just went up against the number one pass rush defense, dominated, and actually Laramie Tunsil held up great against Myles Garrett. So the one power move that the Browns had, an offensive lineman shut down so C.J. Stroud and this offense could work. So I'm a little bit scared of the upset here. I will take the Texans plus 9.5. I think that's a little bit disrespectful for what the Texans just did against the number one defense in the NFL. However, I can understand it a little bit because the Ravens are the number one seed in the NFL, or at least in the AFC, and just how they've been playing over the course of the season.
Against tough teams.
Against extremely tough teams.
They blow out
right.
some of the tough teams.
Like the 49ers, like the Dolphins. They completely destroyed them. So I think it's a little bit disrespectful, but I could understand it just with the Ravens team overall.
Can you put those stats, Lamar stats up? Sure. I got a couple of comments there.
Go for it.
So, Lamar looks pretty bad in the playoffs, right? But you got to remember, the first playoff game he had, he was a rookie, right? He had no experience in the playoffs. Right. He actually made it close at the end, right? It was a very low-scoring game, that game. The second year, he won the MVP, right? And he lost again, I think, right? Didn't he lose again in the second?
He lost in the first. They got crushed by the Titans.
First 2 years, and then he won a game in his third try
in 2020, right?
Yeah,
he beat the Titans again. He got revenge.
Yeah, and then he lost in the.
Then they got smoked by the Bills. He threw a 101-yard pick six.
Yeah. So, those losses, I'd give him the first two. He's just young and inexperienced. I don't think he. But now, he's had quite a bit of playoff experience. 4 games he's played. He didn't make it the last 2 years because he was hurt.
Right.
So it's been 3 years since he's been in the playoffs. He's a different player now. I think he was kind of maybe 1.5 dimensional in his prior games. He's mostly a runner and he could pass some. But now they've got a very good passing game.
I would say he's now a full 2-dimensional
he's shown
player,
he's a complete player now. His passing game is much better than it was. The offensive coordinator is the best that they've had. The receiving core is the best that they've had.
I would agree.
Mark Andrews is not going to play in this game.
Correct.
He'll be available next week. So, but they haven't really needed him. They haven't really needed him.
Right.
I do think they'll get to next week. So he'll be back then. So while you point out that Lamar has been poor in the playoffs, that was quite a long time ago now, and he's a much more experienced player. He hasn't played in the playoffs in 3 years now. So the team is the strongest that they've had. They're number 1 ranked in the AFC, and their defense is very good. They have a great coach, great wide receivers, a very good running game. Lamar being a dual threat there. He can run as well as he can pass. And I think they're going to win. But I agree it's going to be close because the Texans they're special. They're a special team.
I'm going to keep my eye on Lamar Jackson because I do think this needs to be like Dak Prescott. We needed to see an individual performance in the playoffs that was good. And the numbers say, 403 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. The yards are great, and then you look a little bit deeper, and it's like, 90% of those were in absolute garbage time, and one of those interceptions was a pick 6. I'm gonna be really looking at Lamar Jackson because what we've seen this year is, I agree with you, he was maybe 1 3/4, 1.5 threats, I would say, because his passing game, Greg Roman wanted to really dive in on his athletic ability and his ability to run the football. And that's what he did for the first number of years in Lamar Jackson's career, while Todd Monken likes to work on the passing game and develop this passing game to a point where now I think he is a full dual-threat quarterback. And with the addition, with a complete hit with Zay Flowers, bringing in OBJ, Isaiah Likely stepping up to the plate when Mark Andrews goes down, they have this passing game set pretty well. And the defense is one of the best defenses that the Ravens have had in a number of years. And so when it comes to Lamar Jackson, I want to see if he's willing to let the game come to him and play to the strengths that the Texans are going to give him, because I do think the Texans, while they did play phenomenally, I think Joe Flacco, being 38 years old and leading the league in turnovers since he got there, and the defense not being able to take the ball away or really stop C.J. Stroud, I think we're going to see C.J. Stroud under more duress. I think he's going to be maybe second-guessing. I think the loss of Tank Dell is going to be even bigger here, and now Noah Brown's out for the year. I think we're going to see more of the discrepancies that we maybe not that we didn't see when they played the Cleveland Browns, because one guy could take out their best weapon. Tunsil took out their ace card, basically, in Myles Garrett. Those safeties and cornerbacks got cooked. I'm not going to be expecting the same thing from the Ravens defense. I think Lamar Jackson needs to come out and play well. And what we've seen over the course of his playoff tenure is that hasn't been the case. And I'll give you the 2018 playoff game when they played the Chargers. Rookie, came in late in the season. I'll give you that. I won't give you year 2, though. He was a unanimous MVP going against the Tennessee Titans, who I believe were maybe 9-7 that year. I can't give you that one. Because if you're unanimous MVP, there's a reason you were unanimous MVP. You beat the number 1 defense earlier in the year, the New England Patriots, in Week 9. Like, you played great in the regular season. And then Lamar tried to overdo it. That was one thing when I watched that game years ago that I saw Lamar trying to do everything instead of just playing his game, playing the tempo. If you need to speed it up, he speeds it up. He was trying to go 110 miles an hour. Sort of a Josh Allen-y type thing where he's trying to make every single play that wins the game, basically. It's like, no, Josh Allen, it's quarter 1, it's 15, you're 1 minute into the game. So I think the game has to come to Lamar. He's definitely a quarterback that can go off script, playmaker. Obviously, he's a playmaker. Just look at how he plays. I'm going to need to see Lamar Jackson come out here. C.J. Stroud, he's a rookie. All I'm expecting is for him not to play horribly, because what I've seen this season from him is that he can handle adversity. When things don't go his way, we saw him against the Buccaneers. 42 seconds to go, like the length of the field, and score a touchdown, and he did. So I'm just looking for C.J. Stroud to go out and play okay. 230 yards and a touchdown or 2, I'm fine with it. He's a rookie. We shouldn't be expecting him to throw for 274 yards and 3 touchdowns.
If they expect to win, the Texans, he's going to have a fantastic game.
He will need to be the reason why they win.
That's right.
He will need to be.
He's the reason they could potentially win. But, I don't think that's going to happen. But,
and
I thought I was really impressed with them last week, right? Yeah. Against the Browns. Wow. They look like world beaters. So against the number 1 defense in the league. So it's possible they could win the game, but I don't think it's likely.
I would agree with you. All right, we're going to take a break, but coming up, we have some good topics heading for you. We got the Packers and the 49ers. Is there an actual chance Jordan Love can upset San Francisco? Also, Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Detroit Lions. I think a lot of NFL fans in general are happy that one of these teams, Baker Mayfield or the Detroit Lions, are going to make it to the NFC Championship game. And finally, maybe the game of the year. We've seen this before twice. Mahomes-Allen playoffs. Who will take home the win? Mahomes' first road playoff game, excluding Super Bowls. We'll make our picks right after this.
Whether you're just discovering your voice or taking your show to the next level, you know what the world needs to hear. All you have to do is say it. With Spotify, set up your podcast. Your food podcast. Your mindfulness podcast. Your never thought you'd get this far podcast. And watch those sparks fly.
I put a picture of the comment.
Drop the episode anywhere people listen. And find out who they're cooking with. Where they're finding inner balance. And why they love your show. You're already a creator. Now you can create, connect, and get paid for your passion with one single free tool. Spotify for podcasters. Talk where the world listens.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.
Welcome back to the Harvey Hour. My name's Stephen Harvey. Good to have you in on a Friday. As always, I'm joined alongside my dad, Stephen Harvey. Let's get into our next topic of today's show. So what we saw from Jordan Love and this incredibly young Green Bay Packers team is they could hold up. Green Bay, and especially the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love, have stepped up to the task. Jordan Love in the past 9 games, 21 touchdowns, only 1 interception, playing out of his mind. And now they go up against maybe what is the hardest task they've had to face so far this season, going up against the San Francisco 49ers and Brock Purdy, who had his only 4 losses of his entire career this season. It's going to be a very, very tall task for Green Bay and for Jordan Love, while Brock Purdy and the 49ers, they had a little bit of a downswing early in the season, but have come back to life in the past couple weeks. Now they're set to face a very young, hungry, and so far dominant Green Bay Packer team. I want to know, what's more likely, a Jordan Love upset or a 49er blowout?
This is kind of a repeat of what I just said about the Texans and the Ravens. I think that it's going to be a very close game. I don't think that the 49ers will cover the point spread, but I do think they'll find a way to win the game. I got the score 31-28, so it's going to be close. The Packers, wow, they look great against the Cowboys, and Jordan Love looks like a world beater, huh? And the last 3 games, they've scored 38 points a game. They've got a great O-line, offensive line. They gave up the 3rd fewest sacks in the season. They're 9th in yards per carry. They have a great running back in Aaron Jones. Their wide receiver core is young and hungry and looks almost elite. Dobbs is a great prospect and player so far for them, only in his 2nd year. And I just think their defense. That's why they're not going to win this game. I think the defense is poor against the. Let's see, what do I have here?
The pass?
Yeah, they're not very good against the pass, so I think that's going to hurt them. But on the other side, yeah, they allowed the 28th in most rushing yards allowed, and they were 20th against the pass. So their defense is a little suspect. It was great last week. They got ahead 27-0, and then they played soft in the second half and just tried to run the clock out. So the points that Dallas were mostly garbage points. So I think that it's going to be really close. I think the 49ers actually have some pressure on them because Shanahan, while he's had some great teams and they've had some nice runs, he's lost some big playoff games, right? Yeah. He lost last year in the NFC Championship game. And the year before that, he lost, wasn't it the Super Bowl? Or was it the year before or the year before that? I think it was
2019, he lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That was against the Kansas City Chiefs.
So he has never won the Super Bowl.
Never.
He's never won the Super Bowl. So I think if they lost this game, I think they'll be on Shanahan. I think they'll be on Brock Purdy too. They'll say he's no good. So there's some pressure on the 49ers. They have the advantage of playing at home. And I do think they're going to win, but it's going to be close.
So I'm taking a risk, but I'll say this. We've seen Brock Purdy and people, MVP player, right? And that's what people are arguing. We've argued that maybe 3 or 4 times on the show. And I said, no, he's not an MVP player. And what I always look at, what I've hoped to see from Brock Purdy is, can he fight through adversity? Because this 49er team is so good that there's really no adversity. But in this season and in particular moments, we have seen maybe 4 times Brock Purdy not look all that great. In his 4 losses, these are his numbers. Completion percentage, 60%. Passing yards a game, about 254. Touchdowns, 3. Total turnovers, 11. A passer rating of 68.4. Very similar to Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, at least the passer rating. So when Brock Purdy is faced with adversity, It hasn't been good. In his 4 losses, he's been terrible. Absolutely terrible. What about his head coach, Kyle Shanahan? Everyone thinks Kyle Shanahan, and based on everyone who comes out of the Shanahan tree, performs very well. How about him as a head coach? How does he do when he needs to fight against adversity? When trailing by 7 or more points in the second half and in the fourth quarter, these are the numbers. He's horrible. 4-42 when trailing by 7+ points, including the playoffs. 4-42 and trailing in the second half of 7+, and that's an entire half. You're only down by a touchdown. What about in the fourth quarter alone? 2-41. He is terrible. And that's where in the Raven game I said if the Ravens can get up by a field goal, they have a great shot. A phenomenal shot to win the game. Well, didn't take them long to go up by a field goal. They didn't need to do it in the fourth quarter. So I think when it comes to this game, what we've seen from the Packers is they are shockingly good. Surprisingly good. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. All my expectations was to see if Jordan Love could replicate what Aaron Rodgers did last season. Well, safe to say, he crushed those expectations and actually was better than Aaron Rodgers. Dontavian Wicks, very good receiver recently. Christian Watson, he has had health issues, but as a deep threat, last season we saw he could do it. Romeo Doubs this year had a great year. Luke Musgrave had a great year, especially in the playoff game. There was a touchdown where you could zoom out. It was basically like every Brock Purdy throw. You zoom out, no one's on the screen. So I said this about Tampa Bay. The year is too weird for me to pick a bunch of the favorites. And if you did actually, you would lose actually a bunch of money if you bet the money line on every favorite so far in this season. You lose, I think I saw it was like $1,000. So in this game, I took the risk. I don't think we had a show. We may have been doing the show. By the way, this is not relevant, but we've hit 2 years 2 days ago, 2 years of doing the Harvey Hour. But I don't know if we were doing the show. We may have, we may not have. When Green Bay played San Francisco, I bet my friend and said, how about this? Jimmy G is going to beat the 49ers outright. Completely outright. We bet about $50. Well, thanks to special teams and thanks to Aaron Rodgers completely falling apart in the second half, the Packers lost to Jimmy G. And in this case, that was the last time the Packers were in the playoffs. And what this season has shown is that it's a revenge season. We've seen the Eagles beat the Cowboys consistently. The Cowboys beat them this year. We saw the Detroit Lions beat the Chiefs. We saw the Eagles, after losing the Super Bowl, they beat the Chiefs. We see a number of teams have revenge games. And in this case, I'm saying that trend continues. I'll get the Packers winning 34-31. I just think that this young team is playing on such a heater right now. And here's something else that's very, very interesting. The main losses that the 49ers had this season. So, in legitimately, they had 5 losses this season. In 4 of their 5 losses, they allowed over 100 rushing yards. The Green Bay Packers this season have nearly every single game. They have 6 games this season under 100 rushing yards. So if they hit 100 rushing yards, the data shows that you have a very good chance at beating this 49ers team. And something else that has to be spoken about is Brock Purdy, because the numbers say it. Let's bring up the numbers again. The numbers say that Brock Purdy is a massive factor in these 49er losses. 11 total turnovers to only 3 touchdowns in the 4 losses. I mean, the writing was on the wall with the Cowboys. Maybe I'm crazy, but I just it's been an incredibly weird year. It's been a revenge year. Teams have been, beating teams that last year they lost to. It's a revenge year. Yeah. So I'm going with the Packers winning.
You know what? You might be right. Generally, and let's see, 1, 2, 3. There's 4 games this weekend, right? There's going to be an upset. There's always is. Last week there were several upsets, right? The Texans beating the Browns.
Half of the games were upsets.
Half the games are upsets. So there's going to be an upset this week. I think the most probable upsets are the Texans could potentially beat the Ravens and the Packers beating the 49ers. I think you're onto something there. I think the more likely one is the Packers beating the 49ers. I have that a 3-point game, and I think it could go either way, and it will be fun to watch.
I think what Matt LaFleur needs to do, and he's shown that it isn't all Aaron Rodgers was the reason why his massive success. You go in with the youngest team in the NFL, but Jordan Love, who in the beginning of the season looked horrible, and you transform him into this quarterback who's 21-1 touchdown to interception ratio in the past 9 games. We're seeing a tremendous growth in a pretty short amount of time, a couple months, and all of a sudden he looks like a top 10 quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
And he does that against the second best pass rushing team in the NFL. Yeah. I understand the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs, but still, the talent on there and to excel to that level so quickly in your first playoff game with the youngest team, that shows great leadership in the part of Jordan Love, getting his teammates hyped and ready for the game, and that's Matt LaFleur coaching his team to be prepared. And the magic number is 7. If you lead by 7 entering that second half, we'll bring up the numbers again. The chances of you winning are they're basically 99%.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be very fun to watch that game.
Near 91%.
A very exciting game, I think. 49ers might be the Packers may be the Cinderella team of the playoffs. Maybe they're the ones that are going to surprise everybody and go all the way.
Yeah, maybe.
Could happen. I think the thing, though, what do you think about their defense?
That's what worries me a little bit. That definitely worries me a little bit. And what the Packers don't do well in on defense, the 49ers do very well in. They're 28th against the run. The 49ers, on the other hand, are 3rd in the run. So you're going up against a 28th defense in the run, and you run at the 3rd best team of any other team in the NFL. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Christian McCaffrey is the main cog that keeps the offense running. We saw it in the Ravens game. When Purdy was throwing 4 interceptions, a player that had a pretty good game that game was CMC. So that's my only worry about this, is that CMC will get going. He's fresh. He's a full participant. So that's my main concern when it comes to this team, is that Christian McCaffrey will have a pretty good game. That's really my only concern, though, because I know Brock Purdy's gonna throw to wide open receivers if they're open. But if he starts turning the ball over, if he has 2 interceptions in the first half, I'd say the Packers could be up by 7. And in that case, we go back to it. You have like a 95% chance to win. 92 if you're entering the second half, up by 7. So that's what I'm going with. I don't love it. I don't trust the pick because it is the 49ers, and they basically have no holes on any side of their team, maybe kicking.
Their talent on offense is better than anybody's, and they're going up against a defense that's a little bit spotty.
Little bit. I would say it's decently spotty, but to go up against the Cowboys and do that to them, hey.
The defense played well against the Cowboys. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Now you could say, 32 points. Yeah, at that point, backups were in. Jordan Love was out. Like, it was a bunch of, you don't even got to worry about that. 21 completions, or 21 attempts for Jordan Love.
Yeah.
He had over 270 yards and 3 touchdowns?
Well, they have a great running game.
They do.
Aaron Jones, right? Their offensive
Cowboy
line.
killer. Cowboy killer right
They have
there.
A complete offense, I think.
Yeah.
Their wide receiver core is underrated.
I would
really
agree
come on.
Right.
Their offensive line is good. Their running back is great. Their quarterback is an emerging star. I think they have a complete offense. I think it's their defense that cost them this game by a very small margin. We'll see.
Go Pack, go! Let's do this. All right, let's get into the next game here. And what a game this will be, I just think, for NFL fans in general, because we do have Baker Mayfield's redemption year with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we have the Detroit Lions, who have won their first playoff game since 1992. And one of these teams is going to make the NFC Championship game. So I think just in the NFL realm and as fans of the NFL, this is great, because we saw Baker Mayfield, who's on his 4th team in like 3 years, and then he's going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have like a 6.5 over-under win total. And all of a sudden, they're in the playoffs, winning playoff games, beat the Philadelphia Eagles, and now have a chance to make it to the NFC Championship game. While the Lions, it's been a long time. They've been doing stuff they haven't done for 3 decades. Win the NFC North, which they haven't done in 30 years, and win a playoff game, which they haven't done in 32 years. So this game is going to be tremendous. It's the number 4 seed against the number 3 seed, 3 p.m. Sunday on NBC. It's going to be a great matchup. It's the NFC divisional matchup between these two teams. I want to know, can Baker and the Bucs find a way to upset Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions?
I'd say it's possible, but not probable. I think the Lions had all the pressure in the world on them last week, having Matthew Stafford come back to their building, having Jared Goff having to go up against Sean McVay, who never had much confidence in him, and really didn't treat him very well at all. That was a lot of pressure, and have Dan Gamble in his first playoff game with some of the stunts he's pulled that have really cost him games during the regular season. I thought that the Rams were going to win that game. I was wrong. It was a 1-point game, and the Rams really could have won that game. They had a couple of poor calls against them, that pass interference that looked like on Puka Nacua that was not called, Nate, and also the Rams getting some holding calls there near the end that backed them up. So they had to kick a field goal instead of scoring a touchdown. It was a really close game. So I think that getting over that hump gives the Lions a lot of confidence. I think they're going to beat the Buccaneers and cover.
So, that's your score, 31-24, sorry. So I actually looked back at the clip where I said Baker Mayfield was not going to be a starting quarterback anymore. And it was a little bit humbling to see my take from, I think, November or sometime late last year when he got benched on the Carolina Panthers for P.J. Walker. And you take a look at this Bucs team now, and they're last in the run, which they have been now for the second straight season. And you see Baker Mayfield in the playoffs, and he actually is pretty good in the playoffs. I think he has over 100 passer rating. He averages a bunch of yards per game, and he nearly beat Mahomes. If Chad Haney didn't run for 13 yards against the Browns in the playoff game when Mahomes was hurt, they had a very good chance at beating Patrick Mahomes. However, I don't think this team could make it. I'm picking the Lions to win. I'm saying that the Lions get the win here, 24-17, because I think there is a lot of momentum for this team. You just won your first playoff game. The city of Detroit's going bonkers at this point. Now my only concern is, will this team celebrate a little too much? Are they a little in over their heads now? They finally won the playoffs. Is this a momentum swing, or is it a sigh of relief that we did it? So they get complacent. They take their foot off the gas a little bit. And if they do, based on Baker's playoff repertoire, there's a very good chance Baker could actually crush this team's hopes. But for me, I'm saying Dan Gamble, he gets it done. I'm saying that Jared Goff, by the way, Jared Goff, when the pocket was kept clean and he wasn't under pressure, was 19 of 19. He was perfect. And I think with this offensive line, and hey, I don't know if the Bucs are going to do the same thing that they did against the Eagles, where they literally rushed 70% of the time, basically. I don't know if they're going to do that. But if they do, I'm a little bit concerned because Jared Goff under pressure is not great. He's not great under pressure. And this Lions defense is great against the run, which is good for a Bucs team that can't run the football. The only bad side is both teams play into the strengths of either team. Their passing defenses are horrible. The Lions, once again, have a very poor pass defense, and the Buccaneers' pass defense is like bottom 3 in the league. I'll give you the actual number right now. The passing defense this season is 29th. So I'm a little bit worried, just a tiny bit worried, that Baker might all of a sudden throw for like nearly 400 yards and just light up the field while, Jared Goff could be under pressure, and that'll lead to mistakes. But with Sam Laporta back, and what we saw last time, he caught a touchdown in that game, which was crucial. Look at the final score was. He's going to be a big part of it. We saw Josh Reynolds have a very great start to the game. We saw Amon-Ra St. Brown have crucial catches and late in the game, making some big-time catches. The defense, when it mattered, slowing down the Rams. And unfortunately, on that last drive, Kyron Williams could not get in there. So you were able to, I don't think, that your backup running back is going to excel if you're the Rams. Kyron Williams had a phenomenal year, 12 games, I believe, had over 1,000 yards. But
Lions got a little luck in winning that game.
You think so?
I do. I think the penalties are what beat the Rams in that game.
I'm saying it's the red zone. You go 0-3 in the red zone? I don't think that's luck. I think you 3-3 for the Lions, 0-3 for the Rams. That's huge.
Past interference that wasn't called against the Lions on Puka Nacua, and the 2 holding calls when they were down near the in the red zone and wound up having to kick a field goal. That's what cost them. That's to me. That's the reason to me, Nate. Well, okay, look how well Matthew Stafford played. They played really well, and Williams got hurt. He had 61 yards in that game till he got hurt. He was playing well.
What about the missed neutral zone infraction? What about that one? Huh? You could say that they were bad. There were missed calls on both sides. Yeah, well, but I guarantee
that neutral zone one wasn't down near the last minute of the minute and a half of the game.
People would be more disappointed that they made that call at that point in the game. Look at all the late calls that were called in games, and we always say that refs get involved. I think we got to be not hypocritical about this and say thank God that the refs didn't determine the outcome of the game. The players played. You could also say this: the Rams had an opportunity. Don't let, I believe it was Amon-Ra St. Brown who called it, don't let them convert on 2nd and 9 or 3rd and 9, whatever the case may be. Don't let them convert on that last drive, and you had an opportunity to win the game. So I think I'm going to take the Lions here. I think they continue. Their foot is on the gas, and then they go up in an NFC Championship game, which in my mind against the Packers, and you have an opportunity as the Detroit Lions to make it to the Super Bowl, which if I'm not mistaken, you've never done in the history of your franchise. So
you don't think if the Packers beat the 49ers,
I'd be mortified on the Lions.
You don't think mortified. They could beat the Lions?
Well, they already did.
I think that's an easier game.
They gave them problems in the first matchup. Then the Packers beat them in the second one. If I'm the Lions and I was going up against the Packers, I would say thank God it's not the Niners. But the Packers gave us a bunch of trouble. So I'd be pretty scared if I was the Lions and that was my circumstance. If I'm the Bucs and they somehow beat the Lions, I think they were going to lose to either the Packers or the 49ers. I just don't think that Baker Mayfield, and it would, if we talk about comeback stories, Baker Mayfield going from he's just a replacement quarterback so they can get a high draft pick to going to a Super Bowl, I think that would be a tremendous redemption story. And you could, I know I don't think he's up for, he doesn't have really any odds for this, but
I don't think their defense is good enough to get him to the Super Bowl. The Buccaneers.
Their passing defense is
terrible.
Yeah.
Running defense is good, but the passing defense stinks. I think on offense, they've got the weapons.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
Chris Godwin, Chris Godwin. Look how well Baker Mayfield played in the last game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they have the weapons on offense, but I don't think their defense can get them there.
And what was shocking in that game was you were seeing some, unsung heroes that, not top-tier players. Trey Palmer had a great touchdown. He was wide open up the left side. He was making plays. You had players who you're like, who is that guy? I got to look up the number. Who is he? Number 10 on the Trey Palmer. Who is he? You see players making plays. Cade Otton, I believe, was the leading receiver in that game. Brady couldn't make it work with them, really. He was trying to get Kyle Rudolph involved. And without Gronk, he was trying to, get Cole Cleft involved. Yet Baker Mayfield with Cade Otton's making it work. So, it was impressive just to see how Baker worked against, you could argue, a depleted Eagles team, a team that hit rock bottom in the Philadelphia Eagles. However, you still put up the numbers that Baker Mayfield did. I'd say it's impressive against whatever competition you're against, especially with what we know of the history of Baker Mayfield, how he got to this point. And what, before the season started, he was battling for the starting job with Kyle Trask. So that was setting yourself up for, I'm not a great quarterback right now. And yet, look what you did. You led the Bucs to a playoff, to a playoff win, and had a better record than Tom Brady, and had better stats than Tom Brady, minus passing yards per game. But hey, Baker Mayfield had a great game, great season. But I think the Lions are riding on a little bit of a higher level right now. I think they have
getting over
more
that
developed
hump,
culture, and the city of Detroit needs this.
Winning their first playoff game there, I think, got them over the hump. I think they're going to find a way to win this game. Yeah, I agree.
I just need to see that same momentum, that same swing, because Josh Reynolds early in the game, he was making great catches, moving the chains. I need to see that. And I think a downfall for this game could be Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery not being as big factors as they were against the last week against the Rams.
Jared Goff turning the ball over could happen too.
And that's my one worry. But
he played really well last week, man.
Yeah,
very impressive.
When the pocket was kept clean, he was 19 of 19.
Yeah. Perfect.
So, we'll have to wait and see. The final game. This is the final game of the divisional round. It is the Kansas City Chiefs against the Buffalo Bills. What a game this is going to be. The number 2 seed Bills at the welcoming the number 3 Kansas City Chiefs. This is Mahomes' first road playoff game, excluding Super Bowls. This is going to be a game for the ages. The Bills favored by -2.5 points. Mahomes so far, you look at his playoff numbers, they're insane. They're tremendous. I think he has 13 playoff wins. If he gets this, he ties Brett Favre and by the way, Brett Favre had a long career. Mahomes in year 5, year 6, and he's already going to match Brett Favre in playoff wins. It's incredible what Mahomes has done. I want to know, do you think Mahomes will maintain his playoff dominance over the Bills and go up 3-0 against Josh Allen in the playoffs?
I don't. I think the Bills are going to find a way to win. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you just said. Mahomes' first road playoff game. And it's in Buffalo. And that crowd helps the Bills for sure.
Big time.
I mean, you looked at last week's game. They had to go in and shovel out their seats. Yeah. You couldn't even see the seats. There was so much snow in the stadium. And they had to stand the whole game because you couldn't sit down. Those fans are rabid, man. They're really behind their team, and I think it helps the Bills. And I think that's going to affect Mahomes. His first road playoff game, I'm afraid it's going to be a loss.
So what's the score you got?
I have 28-24 Bills.
So I'm going to just say this up front. I agree with you. I do think the Bills are going to win, and my score, if we're going to go with, is 21-17. I think the Bills are going to win this game. But maybe not as for a reason that you're thinking. I think it has to go back to what exactly I just talked about when it comes to the Packers 49ers. Let's bring up the numbers, the playoff comparison in the head-to-head matchup between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is 2-0, 75% completion percentage, 351.5 yards passing yards per game, 8.6 yards in attempts, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, a passer rating of 125.2. And Josh Allen, 64% completion percentage, drastic difference there, 11 points. Passing yards per game, 308, so it's like 50, nearly 50 below Mahomes. 7.2 yards per attempt, 1.4 below Mahomes. 6 touchdowns, 1 pick, same amount of touchdowns, 1 more interception, and a passer rating of 104.8. So if you just cover one player and just look at the other player's stats, really good. You do the same thing on the other side, still really good. Now you take it way back, it's like, oh man, Mahomes is whooping him. Absolutely whooping him. And so in this case, I am going with the Bills to win here because I think we need to talk about the redemption stories that happen so far this season. I think this is going to be another one of those redemption arcs. And I think a lot resides on this when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. Because if Josh Allen loses again to Mahomes, and this time at Orchard Park, in your own house, you welcome Mahomes, and you still find a way to lose. I think we could now talk about, A, if the Chiefs are in the playoffs, your Super Bowl window is shut, and B, Josh Allen will never beat Mahomes in the playoffs. Because if you can't, when the Chiefs have had the worst receiving core they've had since Mahomes got there, Travis Kelce not being the Travis Kelce we've seen, no real receiver having a significant impact, Rashee Rice you could say maybe, but he's not at the level of any one of the superstar receivers you see in the NFL, definitely not what Tyreek Hill could do. The offensive line, you have the 2 tackles, Jawan Taylor and Donovan Smith, who have been pretty bad this season. Your defense, which has been good early on, but we saw the last time they played against the Bills, early on, Josh Allen's moving the ball up and down the field with them. If you can't beat the Chiefs, especially this Chiefs team, I don't think you can beat them ever in the playoffs. You already beat them in the regular season. Now, does that redemption arc carry over since you already beat them in the regular season? I'm going to say no. I think when it comes to the playoffs, that's where another redemption is going to hit. You're 0-2 if you're the Bills against Mahomes. You played him twice in Arrowhead. You had that, and we thought we were ripping on Josh Allen on the show, or not Josh Allen, but the play calling and that 13-second end to that game.
Oh yeah,
13 seconds. You're playing bracket coverage. The Chiefs had all their timeouts, and you let them just run up and down the field.
Well, this is the redemption game for the Bills, so they got to win this game. And if they don't, do you think McDermott's fired?
I think there's a serious conversation about it. I don't know if you're going to do it, but I think there is a serious conversation about it. And not only that, this may be the most consistent Bills offense we've seen. Because look at earlier in the year, up, down, up, down, up, down. You lost to Mac Jones during this season of Mac Jones. It was an up and down season all year.
Maybe Bill Belichick ought to hold off a little bit on his Falcons.
He's not going to
decision to wait and see what happens in that Bills game. If McDermott got fired, could be the one they pick.
The Bills have won 7 of the last 8. I think if you're the Bills, you got to go with them. I just think this Chiefs team it's not a Super Bowl team.
I don't know. The defense is good enough.
I don't think so.
The wide receivers have played better lately. The Rice has done very well.
Right.
And Kelsey, this is his could be his last game. He's going to retire at the end of the season. He said he's already said he's going to retire.
Really? Travis Kelsey said he's going to retire at the end of the season.
That's what I heard.
I saw Andy Reid might retire too.
Yeah, well, just confirm that. Just put that in there. I heard that he said he was going to retire. This is it.
I'll keep looking at it, but Jason Kelsey is going to retire.
Jason Kelsey's going to retire.
Yeah, Jason Kelsey. What I see is Travis Kelsey shuts down retirement talk and fed a player for no reason to stop playing football. I think that's a little bit BS because he said earlier this year he's feeling
every one of his
injuries.
10 surgeries he's feeling it. Yeah. So he's denied it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I'm glad because I like Travis Kelsey a lot. I like watching him play. He plays with a lot of fire. I like seeing Taylor Swift in the stands there rooting for him.
Oh, you like it?
Yeah, I do.
I think it's a little bit overblown.
Yeah, I like
every 5 minutes you see Travis Kelsey if the Chiefs are on offense. I think
the Chiefs, Andy Reid retires, man. That will be tough for them.
I think so as well. And supposedly the rumor is that Matt Nagy would be the first option to replace him. And if that's the case, the Chiefs are not going to do well because we saw without Eric Bieniemy, Matt Nagy is the OC, that this Chiefs offense, it's ugly. It's really ugly. But in this game, I think the Bills are riding high right now at a perfect time. They are not as inconsistent as they were over the course of the Bills' tenure so far with Josh Allen, and especially earlier in this year where they were win, loss, loss, win, loss. No, at this point, you've won 7 of 8. You've beat some really good teams in the process. The Chiefs, the Cowboys. You beat the Dolphins. I would say that you're in a perfect position to go up against the Chiefs and win.
Yeah.
However, that being said, it's Josh Allen against Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. I'm terrified at this point. I am going to pick the Bills though.
Yeah.
I
think a key factor in this game is Allen not getting too overhyped.
Right.
When that happens, man, he makes mistakes.
Big time.
He turns the ball over, interceptions, fumbles. He's got to keep his head. Don't get too overhyped.
Yeah. And I think a key for them would be is to limit Isaiah Pacheco, not let him have so many dominant runs and gain the first downs, and in part, maintain that running game. They had a tremendously balanced game against the Steelers. 189 passing yards with 179 rushing yards. That is probably one of the most even games the Bills have had all season. I think you need to bring that as well. You need to bring a balanced game, let James Cook run free, let him pick up some great yards, and let Josh Allen just throw it to the open guy. I fully expect an interception or two. Fully expect.
Well, they got to establish the run on the Bills so they can use the play action.
I think Josh Allen, I don't know if this is true, but he needs to not. He can't have the PTSD of the 13 seconds again. You can't let that get to you.
Yeah.
Because we saw, last year, the Bills in the playoffs, they nearly lost to Skylar Thompson, who is still the Dolphins' third-string quarterback, and they got smoked by the Bengals. You can't let that get to you.
Yeah, well, they also have to be calm in the red zone.
Yeah.
That's been Allen's nemesis, too. He throws interceptions, throws the ball into the end zone, and it's intercepted.
Correct.
That happened to him a couple of times in a recent game against the Dolphins, actually. They found they were lucky to win that game, 21-14. Well,
last year he did lead the league in red zone interceptions.
Yeah.
So if you can minimize the mistakes there, this Bills team is first on third down. So that's big. They're keeping their opponent's defense on the field, and they're moving the chains. You got to keep this ball moving. Now there's some injuries that you got to look out for. Tyler Rapp, their starting safety, he's going to be out for this game. I think that's big. Gabe Davis, who had a 4-touchdown game in that 13-second loss, he's going to be out for this game. So you're not going to have him to score 4 touchdowns. However, you do have a brand new tight end named Dalton Kincaid, who had a pretty good year this year. You also still have Dawson Knox, who's been a pretty good tight end for you. James Cook has now emerged as a pretty good running back. It's the first 1,000-yard running back you've had in a decent while. So this actually, besides the Packers 49ers one, because I do think there'll be a blowout, or I'm sorry, not blowout, an upset. This is probably the game I don't feel great about picking the winner of, even though it's a favorite.
Yeah.
So for me, I have.
You felt more comfortable picking the Packers to upset the 49ers than you did the Bills to beat the Chiefs.
No. I would say this is probably the second one I'm most uncomfortable about. Because the Packers one, I just think there has to be an upset somewhere.
I think there is going to be. There's definitely going to be an upset.
It could be Chiefs-Bills. It could be Chiefs-Bills. It's the lowest point spread of the weekend.
3 upsets in the last week's games.
Yeah.
So there's likely going to be at least one this week. So I think you're right. It's likely the Packers 49ers upset.
Why can't it be? I think Chiefs-Bills is probably it's the lowest point spread.
Yeah. To me, that's not really an upset. I'd say see the 2.5 points negative point spread there. Chiefs against Bills. I see them evenly matched.
Okay, really so you say if the Chiefs win, this won't be an upset. And based on the playoff history, you'd be right.
Would people think it's an upset if the Chiefs beat the Bills? Well, I don't think so.
Technically, if you look at the points,
I think the upsets are if the Texans beat the Ravens and the Packers beat the 49ers. Those would be real upsets.
What about Bucs Lions?
I don't know. I think a lot of people think the Lions sometimes, and I felt this, maybe they're not quite for real. And their head coach can gamble too much.
That's
and
true.
Their quarterback, well, I like him a lot. He's had some games where he had some turnovers. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah. Well, with that, it does wrap up our preview and picks of the 2023-2024 NFL season divisional round. We're going to see on Tuesday what the outcomes of these games will be. Saturday and Sunday games. It's going to be great to watch. This time of the NFL season is one of the best. More cards getting pushed to the table. The stakes are getting even higher. It's time for some real playoff NFL football. Now you got the top tier teams in the playoffs now playing, so it's going to be a great weekend. But for this episode of the Harvey Hour, that will be it. My name's Nathan Harvey. That's my dad, Stephen Harvey. We are the hosts of the Harvey Hour. Catch us Tuesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube.
Good night, Grandpa.
Using Wi-Fi without NordVPN could mean sharing your private stuff with more people than you think. Stay safe on public Wi-Fi. Get NordVPN's special offer and encrypt your internet connection. NordVPN. Online security starts with a click.